Hey y'all, Nacho here. This is the first... whatever. Hey y'all, Nacho here. This is the first reading of the Unfrantic Fanfic series. Now, I do just want to give a brief foreword and just thank y'all so much for working with me and on the Frantic verse and just everything. I've not felt this much creative passion for anything in a long time. Now, I'm going to go through my Unfrantic fanfics one by one and finally do readings for them. And hopefully they're good. Anyway, so yeah, let's get started with Unfrantic Fanfic 1, The Wiggler's Last Stand. A harsh sandstorm blew through the Sahara Desert in a mostly uncharted portion of the nation of Egypt. Hardly any life or color could be seen in the landscape, save for a yellow dune buggy that was slowly trudging through the sand. Two occupants sat inside. One of them, the driver of said buggy, was a yellow caterpillar wearing an elaborate green outfit. The other was a small mole, who was currently face-deep in a map. Rocky Wench glanced at his partner, his face bearing an uncertain expression.
Are you sure that we're going the right way? It's hard to make heads or tails of anything out here.
The Wiggler nodded, while squinting his eyes to try and peer through the blistering storm. Fairly certain. My intel gave us pretty exact coordinates. I know this is your first time tagging along on a heist and all, so I understand the worries. Trust me though, when you're dealing with ancient treasure, sometimes you just gotta go with your gut. Rocky Wench smiled, but still seemed a tad perturbed.
If this is usually what you go through on these things, I guess I'll just grin and bear it. You did promise me you'd give me the genuine experience of treasure hunting.
As he spoke, a massive pyramid came into view just shy of the horizon. He sped up and started making a beeline for the pyramid. As he kept his eye on the pyramid, he spoke a bit more to his partner. That right there is the rumored resting place of the Wobra's Eye, an ancient treasure rumored to be linked to the ancient... That right there is the rumored resting place of the Wobra's Eye, an ancient treasure rumored to be linked to the lost Cluvian continent. Folks have been looking for this thing for ages, and will likely sell for millions. That money can provide a massive boost to Bulgariku's restoration funds, so it's imperative we get our hands on it. He parked the dune buggy next to a small entrance at the base of the pyramid, hardly visible through the sandstorm. The Wiggler climbed out of the buggy, holding the door open for Rocky Wench as he tried to shield himself from the elements using his hat. Rocky Wench made sure to grab his backpack filled with the two supplies, strapping it on tight before hopping out and following the Wiggler into the ancient monument. Neither of them managed to notice the bejeweled pink and black dune buggy that was parked quite close to them. The Wiggler pulled out a fire flower, using it as a light source as the two crept through the dusty stone halls of the massive structure. Rocky Wench put his map away, taking in the awe of being in such an ancient place. He marveled at just how silent everything was, the only sound being the echoes of their footsteps. The hallway they were in was quite narrow, but started to widen out the deeper they got inside. Rocky Wench looked at the walls nervously, before turning to his fiancée.
Wiggly, are there usually booby traps in these places? You know, like the movies?
In most Egyptian pyramids, absolutely not. Typically, they secure them by making it difficult to get in. However, with how accessible the entrance of this pyramid was, along with the fact that there's potentially Cluvian treasure here, it's likely this wasn't made by the same civilization. Really, it's anyone's good. He stopped himself from talking as his foot hovered above a pressure plate. Looking to the wall, he noticed a carving similar to a serpent's mouth with a hole in it. He stepped back, making sure to clear some space from the trigger. Now, I know we Wigglers are usually somewhat fire-resistant, but I ain't looking to flambe my fiancée. Tread carefully. Before either of them could continue, they heard a feminine voice speak up from behind them.
You're one to talk about being careful, Wiggler. This is one of the biggest hunts either of us have ever been on, and you decide now's the time to bring along some new blood?
The duo turned around, the light barely illuminating the anthropomorphic bat who stood in front of them. The Wiggler knew that voice, though. He wouldn't mistake one of his greatest rivals anywhere. Good to see you too, Rouge, he grumbled as he turned towards the Mobian. Glad to see working with Gun hasn't stopped you from being a pain in the ass. Speaking of which, did you take on this score for business or pleasure? Rouge laughed, holding a hand up to her mouth.
Little of column A, mostly column B. Who's the adorable little catty you've brought along with you?
She sauntered forward, keeping her piercing gaze fixed on the mole. Rocky Wench looked unamused, completely unfazed by the bat's feminine wiles.
I'm his fiancé, he said bluntly.
Rouge's expression suddenly shifted to embarrassment.
Oh crap, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
She looked genuinely apologetic as she backed away from Rocky Wench.
Wiggler, you should have given me a heads up. I always wondered why my usual charms didn't affect you.
The Wiggler shrugged. I didn't think it was that important. At least it's good to see you have some sort of standards.
Now, Rouge's expression shifted to a flash of anger. Hey, what's that supposed to mean?
Her rival chuckled as he leaned towards her. I mean that you won't just flirt with anything that breathes, he said smugly as he looked her dead in the eyes. Come on, half the thieving world thinks you're into them. Is trying to give your foes a boner the only way you can get a score these days? Rouge grimaced as she stamped her foot down on the floor, stepping on the pressure plate and causing a pillar of flame to erupt from the wall. The Wiggler was barely able to shove Rocky Wench out of the way in time to avoid getting singed. His eyes narrowing, the Wiggler glanced over and shot a button on the wall. Multiple spears launched from the ceiling, landing in front of Rouge. Her eyes narrowed as she bared her fangs.
Oh, it's on, Wiggler.
She flew at the two, fists at the ready. The Wiggler backed up, stepping on another pressure plate and activating an arrow trap that shot her in the ass. She yelped in surprise before flying behind the duo. Using her heel, she pulled back a tripwire and a giant stone ball dropped from a hole in the ceiling. It began rolling towards them as all three of them started booking it. The Wiggler and Rouge continuing to try and activate traps in an attempt to screw each other over. Rocky Wench was merely trying his best to survive as he rolled and ducked under spikes and blades. Eventually, they had lost the boulder, but they continued at the same pace in an attempt to outspeed the other. After the Wiggler had nearly managed to get her scorched by another flame trap, Rouge came down hard with a kick to a pressure plate on the floor. As the Wiggler and Rocky Wench continued to race forward, the floor opened up beneath them. The daring duo dropped into a pit as Rouge gave a coy wave. The Wiggler scrambled as he tried to brace himself to hit the cold ground, only to feel something sharp pierce his back. He cried out in pain before everything went black. He couldn't tell if minutes, hours, or even days had passed by the time he woke up. He felt extremely groggy as he pushed himself up, only to see Rocky Wench standing over him with a first aid kit they'd packed. He hugged the Wiggler tightly.
Oh, thank goodness you're awake!
The Wiggler looked around at his surroundings, spotting that they were in some type of ornate chamber. Looking near his bandaged backside, he spotted an ornate golden arrow that was stained with what he was presumably his blood. Oddly enough, his flower-tipped cane that he often took to events was laying by his side, though he hadn't brought it on the trip. Yeah. Wiggle me this. Are you alright? A gold aura surrounded Rocky Wench as he stared straight forward, looking like he was possessed.
No, I have 3 broken ribs, I feel somewhat queasy, and I accidentally cut my hand on the arrow as I pulled it out.
The golden aura dissipated as he shook his head.
What happened?
The Wiggler stood up, grabbing his cane as he looked down at Rocky Wench. Admittedly, I'm not sure. You've never been one to overshare like that. Take this. He held his cane out, trying to hand it to him. If you're not feeling well, it can help you walk. An incredulous stare crossed his face as he stared at the Wiggler's empty hand.
What? Are you trying to hand me something?
His partner looked down at this hand, glancing back and forth between his cane and the Rocky Wench. Yeah, it's my cane. I don't know how it got here, but you can use it for now. He shook his head.
Honey, I can't see shit. It looks like you're holding something, but...
His cheeks puffed out as he stumbled backwards, making a weird noise.
Ugh, I don't feel too hot.
Wiggle me this. Do you need any medicine? I've got some antibiotics in our first aid kit, the Wiggler said as he stepped towards the first aid kit. Once again, the golden glow came over Rocky Wench as he stared ahead.
What I really need is a doctor, but some Dramamine would help.
As the glow dissipated, he snapped back to his senses.
Okay, that's weird. Holy shit, I didn't try to say that, it just kind of came out.
Looking back at his cane and glancing at Rocky Wench, a thought came to mind. Wiggle me this. When we were at the cafe this morning, did you eat my last pastry or did a seagull get it? The glow came back, and Rocky Wench began speaking.
I did. It was honestly really tasty, but I was worried you wouldn't give me a bite. I did end up having to fight a seagull for it, though.
It evaporated once more as Rocky Wench stared nervously at his partner.
Sorry, yeah, I did eat it.
Eyes fixed upon his cane, which was slightly glowing by now, the Wiggler continued to ask Rocky Wench questions led by his signature catchphrase. Each time, his partner glowed and gave the correct answer. He made sure to give them all some Dramamine for his queasiness after it was all said and done, and sat down to think about what was going on. He picked up the ornate arrow, inspecting it as he started to form conclusions. I think whatever this artifact is gave me some sort of power. Every time I ask you a question, you always tell the truth. No matter what. Rocky Wench looked at his partner incredulously while bandaging the cut he had obtained from the arrow.
I'd say that's hard to believe, but I've never told anyone my social security number before 5 minutes ago. You gotta be real careful with that kind of power, man.
The Wiggler nodded, but a smug grin came over his face. You're right, but we've still got a gem to grab. Rouge has probably nearly gotten to it by now. I think I know how to scare her off. The mole nodded, shakily standing up as he made sure all his things were in order. The Wiggler made sure to pocket the arrow, keeping it close by as the two spotted a narrow corridor leading deeper into the pyramid. With a renewed determination, the two lovers continued to venture towards their prize. In the center of the pyramid, Rouge stepped into a large ornate chamber. Sitting in front of her was an ornate stone pedestal with a dark black gem at its center. She carefully stepped towards it, being certain not to activate any hidden traps. Getting right next to it, she reached out her claws, ready to swipe it from its place. Not so fast! The Wiggler's voice rang out from the entryway as he entered the chamber, a grin on his face. Rouge scoffed as she turned back around.
Ugh! Don't you two know when to quit? I thought a fall like that would have dissuaded you. Really, Wiggler, when are you going to learn that all the world's gems are mine to keep?
He walked forward, tapping his cane against the floor. Please, I'm not looking for another fight. I've had my fill of those for a lifetime. I just wanted to congratulate you on making it here first. Both Rouge and Rocky Wench shared a look of confusion, but before either could ask what he was doing, the Wiggler continued to speak. However, would you mind if I ask you a couple questions before you leave? Just have some things on my mind. The bat gave a coy smile as she took on a far more casual pose.
A post-game interview, then? I'm happy to oblige one of my greatest fans.
She said the last part with a hint of venom in her voice, as if she was trying to get under his skin. He didn't seem to take the bait, though. Rickle me this. What's the location of your largest safe house? He hit an odd pose, pointing forward with his cane as he leaned back with his lower set of hands on his hips. As expected, a golden glow surrounded Rouge.
I've hidden it deep within Hilltop Zone, located under the second largest mountain in the area. The entrance is about 700 feet above sea level on the west side, only accessible by flight.
She shook her head as the glow faded.
I'm sorry, what the fuck?
Before she could continue, the Wiggler fired another one. Now, wiggle me this. What's the passwords and key codes used to access said safe house and its treasures? Glowing like a light bulb, Rouge rattled off every single one of her security details as the Wiggler wrote them down on his phone. As she finished, she looked completely exasperated, but wasn't able to respond before he managed to fling out another question. Wiggle me this. What are your clearance codes at gun? Without a chance to deflect, Rouge continued to rattle off her sensitive information as the Wiggler continued to ask her questions. He slowly approached her and the gem, Rocky Wench watching as he managed to note down her credit card details and bank information. At this point, he'd already gotten enough information to ruin her, but he kept going. After nearly 20 questions, Rouge stamped her heel on the ground.
Enough! I don't know how you're getting this out of me, but you've made your point loud and clear.
Then allow me to spell it out for my partner, will you? He chuckled as he walked around to the other side of the gem. I'm only really hunting this thing for the money. It'll go a long way to helping the folks affected by the recent war. Still, I'm perfectly happy to let you take it. I know you've got way more capital stashed away in wherever you've holed up. If you take the gem, I can simply yoink everything in your bountiful savings. If you walk out of here with that gem, I'll walk away with both your cash and your pride. However, if you let us have it, none of this information will ever see the light of day. Capiche? Her ego clearly bruised, she growled at the Wiggler before storming towards the door.
This isn't over, she stated angrily as she passed Rocky Wench. Next time we meet, I'm burying you.
The Wiggler waved her off as she disappeared into the blackened hallway. His partner waddled over to the gem, seeming somewhat disturbed by his partner's display of power. However, a reassuring smile from the caterpillar put him at ease. The two reached out to pick up the large black gem, carefully lifting it off the pedestal. As they did so, the room around them began to shake and rumble. Bricks began to fall from the ceiling as Rocky Wench quickly shoved the gem into his pocket. Without much thought, the two began racing down the same hallway Rouge went through, rushing as the entire place began to cave in. As they entered a larger chamber, a massive stone dislodged from the ceiling and began tumbling down towards them. Unable to escape in time, the Wiggler braced himself to be squished. Rocky Wench turned back and rushed towards him, trying in vain to save him. Before the boulder could meet its mark, the Wiggler heard something mechanical move rapidly. He opened his eyes from where he'd been cowering, seeing a robotic figure behind Rocky Wench. Its rusty brown body looked rather skinny, and it had a face that was shaped like a cylinder. Connected to its sides were 6 spindly arms, which somehow had the strength to keep the boulder lifted above their heads. Its lower body was completely replaced by a set of large tank-like treads. Most notably, the figure was glowing with the same energy as his cane. Rocky Wench shifted as the figure threw the boulder away. The mole turned around, staring back at the robotic figure standing behind him. He looked back to his partner, now spotting his cane.
That arrow. It must have given me the same type of power you have.
Nodding, the Wiggler inspected the android behind him. Seems like it, yet yours seems entirely different from mine. Can you try using it? Rocky Wench nodded, closing his eyes and focusing. Without even needing to think too hard, blueprints and models began to appear in his mind. He began trying to think of what they could use to speed along their escape. Behind him, the figure's arms began extending and ripping into the walls. Behind him, the figure's arms began extending and started ripping into the walls. It started tearing out gears and other bits and pieces that made up the pyramid's array of traps. In front of the duo, it began putting the pieces together to form a ramshackle buggy, using the gears as wheels. With great haste, the two hopped on and the Wiggler began to drive it out of the pyramid. As they rushed down the hallways, they spotted Rouge lying on the floor. One of her wings had been pinned to the ground by some rubble. The Wiggler slowed down their buggy, reaching out and pulling her onto the contraption with aid from the robotic figure, who quickly cleared the rubble from her wing. As soon as she was safely on, the Wiggler took off once more, darting through hallways as he navigated towards the entrance with a little help from Rouge. Along the way, the robotic figure began dismantling and disarming traps, with aid from Rocky Wench. Eventually, the car broke out into the daylight once more as the pyramid completely collapsed behind them. Everyone sat there, breathing heavily as they looked back at the ruined structure. Rouge the Bat stood up, gingerly climbing off the machine as she looked at the two with a nervous expression.
Despite everything, thanks for the save, Wiggler.
The aforementioned insect nodded, tipping his hat. Hey, it's no big deal. Also, don't worry about any of that info you gave me. The minute we sell this thing, I'm deleting any trace of it. You've got my word.
She smirked, slightly reassured by the promise. I still have no idea how you pulled that off, but I know you're a bug of your word.
She turned around and started walking back towards her own dune buggy that was parked nearby.
Later, boys.
After Rouge had left, Rocky Wench turned to his fiancée.
So, she can't see them either. Either of them.
He glanced back to the robotic figure, who stood attentively at the mole's side.
Just what is this thing?
The Wiggler pulled out the arrow, holding it in his gloved hand as he looked over its details. I still have no idea, but it has something to do with this arrow, that's for sure. As he continued to inspect it, the two heard the sound of a helicopter hovering overhead. They looked up to see a small chopper begin to descend towards the sandy earth, as it touched down, disturbing the sand around them. The side door opened and a familiar face climbed out. Genetwo walked towards the pair rather casually, having his hands stuck in the pockets of his white blazer. The shiny Mewtwo had a soft smile upon his face as he approached, despite seeing the ruined pyramid.
Good to see you again, Wiggler. Wish we could have caught up a bit more at Peach's gala, but here's as good a place as any.
The pair of lovers climbed off the buggy, which fell apart the minute they touched the sandy ground. The Wiggler approached the crime lord, pocketing the arrow as he stepped forward. Pleasure to see you too. How's business in Toledo?
Giving the two a firm handshake, he responded in turn.
Going quite well. At some point, casinos practically run themselves, so it gives me plenty of time to engage in more personal projects.
Speaking of, I assume you found the artifact, alright? Eyes widening, the Wiggler realized what he was insinuating.
I'm assuming you've been my intel this whole time, then? Well, we've managed to get the Wobra's Eye. It was difficult, but it should be in one piece. How much are you looking to buy it for?
Rocky Wench started to pull the gem out of his pack, but Genetwo shook his head. That's not the one I'm interested in. I'm more intrigued by what you've got in your pocket there.
He pointed to the Wiggler's coat, and the thief replied in turn by pulling out the arrow.
So it truly does exist. Fascinating.
Rotating the arrow in his hand, the Wiggler looked to Genetwo.
So, you know what this thing is? My partner and I seem to have developed some sort of mysterious power after being pierced by it.
Smiling, the Pokemon reached forward to take the arrow. The Wiggler handed it to him and he began inspecting it.
Of course. This is the real treasure I sent you after.
I sent out a message to several prominent thieves, luring them to this place with the promise of the Wobra's Eye. However, the true item of interest is this arrow. I had hoped someone would stumble upon it. No, more honestly, I hoped that someone would be drawn to it. Stepping forward a bit, Rocky Wench took a good look at the arrow.
It's quite old. I can't even begin to imagine what civilization created it.
Genetwo chuckled. Neither can I, yet I know exactly what it's used for. This is what's known as a stand arrow. One of only a couple who exist in this world. It contains a virus, one that infects any living being that it pierces. While for most people, this virus gives them a fatal sickness, for those with strong enough willpower, though, it gives them something incredible. Behind him, a figure began to emerge as the crystal on his necklace gave off a pink glow. It was a slim humanoid figure that looked almost robotic in nature. This is what's known as a stand, a powerful ability that manifests from one's fighting spirit. Those who do not wield them cannot see them, just as I can't see yours. Where I come from, stands don't exist, although I heard many stories about their abilities from my dad. In fact, what you see behind me is the image of my father's stand, Golden Experience. Scratching his chin, the Wiggler looked over his cane once again.
I see. I've heard rumors about this sort of power before, but I've never imagined it would be possible to gain.
Dismissing the faux stand, Genetwo closed his eyes. I don't normally read minds without consent, but it might help in this case. He stood still for a second before speaking again. Wiggler, you've gained the power to ask anyone a question and get an honest answer. Rocky Wench, you've gained the power to build anything you please out of whatever materials you find in the environment. He opened his eyes once more as he turned his gaze to them. These two abilities are incredibly powerful, although there are certainly others out there of similar strength. I'm guessing neither of you have picked a name yet? Most folks just name them after a song or band they like. The Wiggler held up his cane, pondering a good name. One came back to him as he thought back to his childhood.
How about the Wiggles? Fits with my whole shtick and all.
Rocky Wench glanced back at the robot figure, who turned to him and gave a jagged smile with crooked mechanical teeth.
I'll call you Industry Baby. It makes sense since you're so good at building stuff.
As soon as the two finished, Genetwo cleared his throat to draw their attention. Now, as for the matter of the arrow itself, his expression turned grave. It's my request that you two guard it with your lives. Leaning back on his stand, the Wiggler looked confused.
You aren't taking it? You aren't even going to buy it off of us?
Genetwo quickly shook his head. I'm not interested in acquiring a stand. At the moment, I'm seeking the power of Mega Evolution. Still, this thing is an incredibly dangerous weapon. Using the power of their stands, my father and his father before him killed countless people and controlled large swaths of territory. I have no such ambitions, and as such, keeping this thing would likely only serve to tempt any of my more ambitious employees, or simply sit around collecting dust until someone's able to swipe it. No, it needs to stay with someone who is willing to do the right thing and protect it from those who would seek to use their stands to gain power over others. Throughout his speech, a concerned look crossed the Wiggler's face.
You're making it sound like people are gonna start hunting us for this thing.
The Pokemon fidgeted with the arrow, looking down at it as he spoke. Let me put it this way. Wiggle me this. Do you believe in gravity? Now, it was Rocky Wench's turn to bear a confused expression. Of course we do. It's not like you can't notice it or anything. I mean, it's invisible, but we know it's there. My dad always told me that fate worked in a similar way, especially when it comes down to stand users. Though only the three of us... Fate draws stand users together just as gravity draws an apple down from a tree. The arrow wants to be used, and as such it will seek out those with the potential to become stand users. Though only the three of us know that you or two are in possession of the arrow, it won't be long until fate starts drawing others towards both of you. Genetwo spoke gravely as he held the arrow back out towards the Wiggler. But I trust you both to be able to handle whatever may come your way. However, as the Wiggler reached out to take the artifact back, the arrow began to wriggle in Genetwo's grip. As if it had a mind of its own, it slid back and cut through the palm of Genetwo's hand. He dropped the arrow into the desert sand, stepping backwards in shock as he clutched his wrist. The Wiggler and Rocky Wench reached out, both trying to show reassurance. Rocky Wench opened his bag, pulling out the first aid kit. Give it here! I've got some gauze! Genetwo held his hand out, allowing the mole to quickly wrap and treat the gaping wound. Once his hand was bandaged, he looked back to the two with a smile, but they could both tell he was incredibly nervous. It seems that, despite my wishes, the arrow has chosen me. I'm sorry to leave on such short notice, but I gotta get back to safety before the sickness kicks in. You two take care now, and keep that arrow safe. He turned around, walking back towards the chopper while continuing to clutch his hand. The Wiggler reached down and solemnly picked up the arrow, staring at it for a moment before pocketing it. Still holding the Wiggles, he began walking back towards the dune buggy they rode in on. Rocky Wench followed him, Industry Baby disappearing from view as they both climbed inside the buggy. The two rode in silence for a decent way back to their hotel, until Rocky Wench decided to break it. Just what have we gotten ourselves into? I'm of half a mind to try and sell that damn thing, but we all know it only caused another apocalypse. Nodding while keeping his eyes focused on the road, the Wiggler spoke back to his fiancée.
I really don't know. Even with these new powers, I'm still worried that we're a tad unprepared for whatever may come next. I know this, though. Life from here on out is going to be very, very bizarre.
And that's the end of Unfrantic Fanfic Chapter 1. Or Number 1.